can seem ridiculous. For example, I'm a Caucasian American. When I first heard about it, I couldn't even begin to understand the genocide in Rwanda and the ongoing struggle between the Tutsis and the Hutus. I lived through the civil rights struggle in this country. I tended to see struggles as black against white. So when I first heard of the situation in Rwanda, I thought, all of you are black people from the same country. Why are you divided? But you see, because of my life experience, I have been conditioned to look through the lens of race. I'm sure that if someone from one of those tribes looked at our civil rights struggle, they might say, but you're all Americans. How could you not get along? Here's another example. I'm an atheist. I couldn't understand the violence and hatred between the Protestants and the Catholics in Ireland. I used to think, come on, you're all Christians. Why can't you work this out? Some, if not all, of the answer lies in the confusion of the individual identity with the group identity. After my experience at the American Ethical Union meeting, I felt a need to understand and explain this behavior that we so often see in human beings. What I've observed is that we're all under a very subtle illusion. When we become members of a group, at some point or at some level, we confuse our identity with the identity of the group. The survival of the group becomes the equivalent of our own survival. We all do it, and we all do it because it's a survival mechanism that's left over from the time when the group's survival really was the same as our own. So if we're going to move forward as a species into the future in which barriers begin to break down, we must learn to do what I call expanding the circle. We must recognize that as human beings, it's in our nature to think and exist in groups, both small and large. We will tend to confuse our personal identity with the group identity at some level. Once we know this about ourselves, we can start to look beyond the group. We can look at the ideas that we believe in and the goals that we've set, and we can begin to include those who might have similar goals. We must begin to chart a course to a future in which it is what we stand for that's important, and not the specific banner under which we stand. We must realize that people who want to do the same work that we do are not a threat just because they're from a different group. Expanding the circle means that you look for the goals we have in common. Now, often during the last 8 years, I would get frustrated with the policies of the Bush administration. But one of the things I frequently did, because I thought it was important to do, was I would remind myself that these people were doing what they thought was best. And what they were doing what they thought was best for the country. They were doing what they thought was best for everyone. Now, they were looking at and making their decisions from a point of view that I absolutely didn't share. But there was a level at which we could find agreement, okay? They were doing what they thought was best. What I wanted done was what I thought was best, and probably if we explored it, we could find a whole host of areas in which we certainly agree about the outcome and maybe even agree about the method of achieving it. So if we're going to expand the circle, then we have to seek common ground even where we don't agree. And we do that by looking for things we have in common. Now, this is an overly simplistic and obvious statement, but it's exactly the kind of statement that has to be repeated and be repeated often. We must remember that it's in our nature to defend our groups because we have confused our group identity with our own. And those of us who recognize this have to go first. When we expand the circle, we may reach out to others who recoil or even lash out at us. When that happens, we have to remember that they're only doing something that is a very human thing to do. It's not the time to retreat from reaching out, however. As you continue to reach out, you'll find partners for some of your ideas. And when you do, you can work together. Now, we're already doing this. I don't mean to imply that we're not. There are religious organizations that we work with all the time. We presented an award to Sister Alice in the Grace Community Church. So I'm not saying that we can't work together or that we don't work together. We do, and we do it all the time. What I'm saying is that we must understand that as human beings, it is in our nature to defend our group against a threat that may not exist. I adore this community and the group, but I feel this way because of who all of you are and the ideas that have brought us together. It's not ethical culture that I cherish, but rather it's all of you, and it's what ethical culture stands for. So, to expand the circle is to know what you stand for and to seek out those who stand for the same thing. To expand the circle is to understand that your group identity is something which can bind you. To expand the circle is to continue reaching out beyond your group. It may even be something which changes your group. To expand the circle is to live from your ideals and values and to find others who share them. It's the easiest thing in the world to say, but because we are human, it is one of the most difficult things to do. But every time we do it, our group identity gets bigger, and that is our challenge.